The Inclusive Bible translation begins today's gospel. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to give me my share of our inheritance." Jesus replied, "Friend, who has set me up as your judge or arbiter?" Then Jesus said to the crowd, "Avoid greed in all its forms. Your life isn't made more secure by what you own, even when you have more than you need." This is Jesus' shtick. Little does the question asker know that Jesus' buttons have been pushed. This is Jesus' opportunity to continue the rant. Luke records the rant in detail, an embodied rant articulated in parable after parable, healing after healing, confrontation after confrontation. From the moment of birth, in a stable surrounded by shepherds, Jesus has been saying the same thing. The rant. Embody kingdom. Live and bring God's kingdom now, right now, always. The rant specifies now. Jesus says, "I am not judge or arbiter. Who cast me in this role? Humans? The church? Theologians? Preachers preaching judgment? That to live is to work toward one's meeting their Maker with a clean conscience, accumulating treasures in heaven for someday when the next life will be better than this one, where all will be set right." Hogwash. That is not the rant Jesus continually and adamantly shares as gospel. The statement, "I am not your judge," is the clue that the rant is about now and not some far-off day, your day of death. Later on, the rant embodied comes full circle in the Gospel's telling of Jesus on the cross. Not judging the criminal beside him, Jesus extends solidarity, hospitality, welcome now, even in the messiness of suffering and dying. Right then, in that moment, kingdom is embodied, lived, and brought. The rant uses parable to draw listeners in and to point out human nature's impulse and its folly. This story explores the human impulse of greed. The rant, however, is not about greed. Before the story, Jesus clearly says, "Avoid greed." So avoid greed. Attune your ears and heart to hear what the rant is about. There was a good harvest, better than good. There was an overabundance. In the background, I hear the word of Psalm 107. God has satisfied the thirsty and filled the hungry with good things. But only if more barns to store the excess are not built. Only when people embody kingdom, commonwealth, one body, global community is thirst satisfied, the hungry filled, now, always. The rant Jesus is reiterating is embodying, living, and bringing kingdom. There's abundance. The kingdom, embodiment, and response is to avoid greed, the opposite of which is generosity. Generosity now, always. Psychology Today states that greed is the disordered desire for more than is decent or deserved, not for the greater good, but for one's own selfish interest, and at the detriment of others and society at large. Greed is so bad. How bad is it? It is so bad it has a psychiatric diagnosis. According to an article on truthout.org, greed is labeled wealth accumulation disorder. Wealth accumulation disorder. Greed comes with friends. Well, more like a gang, bringing stress, exhaustion, anxiety, depression, despair, behaviors that include gambling, hoarding, saving things for a rainy day, trickery, theft, fraud, addiction, consumption. Oh, that humans would be cured of wealth accumulation disorder. Oh, that there was a psychiatric diagnosis for generosity, like distributive wealth quotient or collective abundance spectrum. Embodied greed. Each of us embodies greed. We work in systems constructed on greed, participate in culture fueled by greed, and live in a society built on a history of greed. Emancipation Day, the doctrine of discovery, climate catastrophes, war in Ukraine, destruction of trees in the public gardens, etc. Greed connects them all. Jesus' words throughout the Gospel of Luke are a retelling of love God and love your neighbor. Avoid greed, Jesus says. Doing so is keeping the commandments. No killing, no stealing, no adultery, no coveting. All sins wrapped in greed and greed's friends. The Rant. The gospel Jesus is preaching is abundance and generosity. Every story contains these things, every one of them. Read the Gospel of Luke from beginning to end, hunting for abundance, searching for generosity, and you will be amazed. Every encounter in the Gospel has God embodied, kingdom in the person of Jesus. That's why the Gospel of Luke contains the Advent Christmas stories, so that we get it from the start. God became human and dwells among us. God's kingdom has come near, right then, right now, always. The Rant. Embodied kingdom, embodied generosity, embodied abundance pops up here, there, and everywhere there is greed. Spewing gospel on power, empire, systems, history, and disordered desires. The Rant is not about judgment. It is not about a future day. It is not preparing for death. The Rant is living embodied and generous lives in God's abundance now, always. If you are the sort that likes a to-do list or a person who likes to make an action plan, do it. Create a list and or plan based on how to live generously and seek out abundance. You can make a chart that reflects how embodied in kingdom you feel. Record what actions you take. Do whatever you have to do to live passionately the gospel Jesus embodied and continually preached. Avoid greed. Live embodied and generous lives in God's abundance to the glory of God.